So you are looking live right now at Capitol Hill, which, by the way, doubled today as the focal point of the presidential race. The special counsel, Robert Hur, testifying before the House Judiciary Committee on why he cleared President Biden from criminal wrongdoing for possessing classified documents, while also describing the commander-in-chief as an elderly man. Democrats are trying to paint Hur as a partisan hack, just waiting for a job in a possible Trump administration.
But you are a Republican, though, aren't you?
I am a registered Republican.
Yes, sir. And you're doing everything you can do to get President Trump reelected so that you can get appointed.
Republicans are using the report to try to highlight what they view as preferential treatment of a president who they say is not totally with it.
But it's frustrating to be like, oh, well, this guy's not getting treated the same way as Trump because the elevator's not going to the top floor, so we can't prove intent.
So what, if anything, did we learn today? And what does this all mean for the future of the Department of Justice, with both sides a little more than upset? Come on in. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. All right, come on in. Here we are. Here we go. Hanging out with us today, Hogan Gidley, former Trump White House Deputy Press Secretary. Roma Daravi, the former White House Deputy Director for Strategic Communications. How'd she get a longer title than you?
She's better in every way.
Democratic strategist, former Blue Dog Coalition's Communications Director Brad Howard. Amisha Cross is the former Obama campaign advisor, Democratic strategist as well. And Mick Mulvaney, former Trump White House Chief of Staff, NewsNation contributor, hanging out with us from Key West. Hello, Mick. All right. We got a lot to get into. There was obviously this big hearing. We'll dive into that in a second. Allie Bradley, exclusive on the border. We're going to have an exclusive coming up later, by the way, with what Congress wants to do, some of them at least, with UAPs. Could there be a new committee? Hot mic with Mick. Mulvaney, you ready out there?
Always for hot mic with you, Blake.
I heard there's some stuff that got you fired up. But we begin with this hearing today here in Washington. Robert Hur, House Judiciary Committee, Democrats, Republicans going at it. Did anyone learn anything today?
Nothing that wasn't already stated.
Oh, okay.
At the end of the day, we knew Republicans were going to try to go up there, especially after the SOTU, and say that President Biden is not all there. He's not mentally capable.
Right.
Try to compare this case to Donald Trump's, which has some very significant differences. And there was nothing there that we didn't hear.
So I didn't hear anybody jumping in and say, wow, this was something, I really...
The only thing I would say is that what I thought was smart that some Democrats did was read the exact text of the report, where in the defense of Biden, because I don't think most of us have read the entire report, that was smart.
Here's the thing. One of these two, Donald Trump or Joe Biden, is going to be the next president of the United States, most likely, right? Democrats are not thrilled with Merrick Garland, by the way, the former nominee for the Supreme Court from President Obama in the Obama-Biden administration. And we know how conservatives, Hogan and Donald Trump, feel about the Department of Justice. So what is the future of the DOJ? We just saw some of it on display here in Washington.
That's a very loaded question because the DOJ is always accused of being political regardless of who's in power at the time by the opposition. That's kind of the way it works. What I did find fascinating about today is that in essence what the report early on said with her is we all saw what Joe Biden and his antics and how he talks and he can't complete sentences. We all see that. But what happens in private? And that report kind of showed us what happens behind the scenes, and it was really damaging. And in essence, he said, look, we can't really prosecute him because he's an old dotard and he is, sympathetic and he's kind of incoherent, all those types of things. What Democrats made a good case of today, not just with the State of the Union reaction, but today was, no, he's great. He's all there. So wonderful. When does the trial start? Because remember, several people have been accused of mishandling these documents. It's Joe Biden, Hillary Clinton, Mike Pence, and Donald Trump. But only one of them has been attacked by the federal government, and that's
only
Donald
one of
Trump.
them tried to declassify the documents, hit them in Mar-a-Lago, didn't return them when the feds demanded them be returned.
And only one of them was actually president of the United States and had the authority and the ability to have those documents.
Matters. It does. And I think when you look at the hearing today, the Democrats repeated this word exonerated, and you heard her jumping in saying that absolutely does not exist in the report. Those details matter because the Democrats have a history of repeating words over and over again to try to get the American people to think that it's
you saying
true,
the same thing when Donald Trump said that he got exonerated multiple times after the reports came out while he was in office? Because he literally stood out in front of the Justice Department and yelled that he was exonerated.
Yeah, much different case, of course, because obviously
the tactic and the messaging was the exact same.
But the facts are different. And when they came out and said there was no collusion between Russia and Donald Trump, he could say he was exonerated. Here,
legally,
obviously Joe Biden did it. He lied about it. They just said we're not going to prosecute him. That's a big difference.
Go for it, and then I want to ask Mick, and then we're going live to the halls of Congress.
I'll just say real quick, the point of the hearing today was I thought what her really got across well was that this was not about my opinion. This was about my ability to convince a reasonable jury of criminal conduct. And what he determined, based on all the facts and the commentary presented, is that he wouldn't be able to convince a jury of reasonable people of criminal intent.
Mick, you've been listening to some of this, and we could play the left and the right game, and we're going to hear from members of Congress on both sides. But I'm wondering if Donald Trump is the 47th president of the United States, what's the DOJ look like in that form, from your view?
It's going to be rough going forward for both parties. It really is. Keep on, one of the things this is a really good debate. I think it's a fascinating discussion as to whether or not he's mentally capable of forming the specific intent to commit the crime, which apparently the DOJ said they were a little concerned about proving, measured against his performance at the State of the Union. That's a really, really good point. I think what's been missed here, however, is the fact that Merrick Garland saw this, and the White House knew Merrick Garland was, and he still let it come out. So I think that sort of takes a lot of the politics out of his own Democrat-appointed Attorney General.
Well, that's why I ask in a possible second Biden term, right? On the other side, Merrick Garland, the guy who the Democrats wanted to be. Amisha's saying he's
Merrick
gone.
Garland is gone.
Merrick Garland, I'm old enough to remember, Mick, when Democrats wanted to put Merrick Garland on the Supreme Court, and Amisha's sitting here saying, see ya if Biden wins.
Oh, no, he's gone. In a second Biden term, again, I think statistically that's less likely than a Trump term right now, but Merrick Garland's finished.
Okay, all right. Hang on by. I want to bring you in inside the halls of Congress. We'll hear from the left, hear from the right, members of the Judiciary Committee on today's hearing. First, though, come on in, Madeline Dean, Congresswoman from the state of Pennsylvania. Congresswoman, thanks for being back here on the Hill. You've been listening, I presume, to a little of this. Your takeaway today, from your vantage point inside that committee room, was?
Blake, it is good to be with you, and I have been listening in, and let me tell you, I was listening into the tease prior to your panel discussion. Oh, I can't wait for Tucker Carlson to tell me what women want. I will not be taping that, recording
that,
or replaying that.
You should watch tonight at 8 o'clock with Chris Cuomo.
I've got other things to look at and more credible witnesses to talk to. So thank you for that. Can't wait for that programming. I'll make sure we don't tune in. Anyway, I'm a member of the Judiciary Committee.
We invite the audience to watch.
And to participate. And have women actually say what they want. So today, her hearing, it was strange when you really think about it. It was more than a 200-page report. It begins with this simple statement, a declarative statement. We conclude that no criminal charges are warranted in this matter. And Mr. Hur, Special Counsel Hur, went on over and over and over and over again, more than 200 pages worth, to say there simply wasn't the evidence to make any kind of criminal charges. This is, as you know, called a declination. He declined to bring charges. So it should really end there. We all found it a little gratuitous that Special Counsel Hur decided it was important for him to talk about the president's memory and to make judgment on that. I don't think he's qualified to do that.
Yeah, what about
I
that?
think we poked holes in his credibility.
And I think this was a passage that you had even talked about, Congresswoman. But the president seemingly gets the year wrong when he was asked about his son. Republicans are trying to point out that this shows, as you heard Matt Gaetz there essentially say, the elevator doesn't go to the top floor. You would say what?
Well, the indecency of some of the folks on the other side knows no limits, knows no basement, frankly. But what I would say is it struck me when I read the report and the shot on page 208 about the president's memory and his failure to come up with the year that his son, Beau Biden, died of brain cancer. When we saw the transcript today, what we saw was very, very clear. On page 82, the president said very, very clearly, what month did Beau die? Oh, God, May 30th. Think of a father trying to get that information across to this special counsel. What in God's name, how was that relevant at all to the treatment of these documents. So I wanted to make sure I poked a hole in that credibility. I also want to contrast what the report says about Mr. Trump and Mr. Trump's willful taking of the documents, hiding of the documents, obstructing justice, ignoring subpoenas, you name it. He had folks moving things around. He asked his employees to make sure that they erased video footage if they could possibly do it. What a contrast in two presidents.
We're going to get to that with your colleague from the other side here, Laurel Lee, momentarily. But before we move on, and I got to run, Congresswoman, if President Biden wins a second term, should Merrick Garland be the Attorney General?
Oh, that's beyond my pay grade. I know the president will win a second term, and I know he will be served by a very able Attorney General. Thanks for having me, Blake.
Congresswoman Dean, thanks for being here. We hope to have you on back. Thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
Take care. Bye.
Amisha?
She was very tempered in her words. I think everyone knows that Merrick Garland will not be returning. The other part of that is that there are Democrats who believe that there was never that should have never been a special counsel appointed to begin with, that Merrick Garland could have handled this himself. I am one who honestly believes in that as well.
But that would have been worse.
I'm not sure that it would, because he, trying to showcase that he's not political, has foiled in so many different ways that I think have made his own trajectory worse. And because there are so many stark differences to what the Congresswoman just said, stark differences between this case and Trump's handling of classified documents, between this case and Mike Pence's handling of classified documents, quite frankly,
I'm going to get to this on the other side, but from the Republicans' perspective, Roma, what did you hear there from the Congresswoman?
Yeah, she really focused on the word willfully, which she should, because that's what this case is about. And at the end of the day, Joe Biden willfully took classified documents, and he took them as a senator and as a vice president. He also willfully shared them with someone who had no clearance, his ghostwriter for a book, and made $8 million off of that book signing, the deal that came beforehand. So those two things are what we should be judging this off of, not whether or not he has the mental acuity to stand trial today, which is not our place to say. But that is the argument that a lot of people are making on the Hill, when we really should be focusing on those two things. Did he willfully take the documents? Yes. Did he share them with anyone? Yes.
Look,
guilty.
The reality is this case is closed, right? We're not going back to it. He declined to press criminal charges. It's done.
That's why I'm more interested in looking forward.
Donald Trump's trials are going to be held and decided by a jury. I think what the American people have to decide is look at their policies, look at their vision, and look at their rhetoric. And go with the one you think is true. Look at the reaction to Donald Trump and how he took documents, and when the DOJ demanded them back, he hid them, paid people to erase things, and hid them, allegedly. And then on the Biden side, when he found documents, he immediately turned them over.
No one's going into the voting booth.
No, but I'm just saying.
I don't think anybody's going to the
pattern of respect.
I don't think anybody's going to the voting booth thinking about either person's documents, to be honest.
Right. Yeah, but and I agree with that. It's going to be about the policies. But he didn't immediately turn them over. He had these things for years. He knew he had them.
When they found them, they knew.
No, but he knew he had them, and it was illegal to have them.
Okay.
He willfully kept them and then didn't turn them over until he was asked about it.
Now to the other side of the aisle, real quick. So that was the Democratic perspective. Now on the Republican side, Congresswoman Laurel Lee is a Republican from the state of Florida, joins us live here on the Hill. Congresswoman, thanks for being back. I know when we talked to you last time, we had to cut out real quick, so we appreciate you coming on back this time. Your takeaway today, Congresswoman?
Well, I think we heard a number of very important things. First, the special counsel walked through the elements of the offense. I believe it was uncontroverted here that we know that President Biden had documents that were sensitive, documents that were classified, that he should not have had, and that ultimately the decision to decline prosecution by the Department of Justice was based on other factors, including that one we heard so much about today, that it was his belief that a jury would basically take him for an elderly, well-meaning gentleman who was forgetful. The important thing for us there really goes so far beyond this special counsel investigation and this decision by the Department of Justice to decline prosecution. It goes straight to the question of, if this is the assessment, if this is what we believe the jury would make an assessment of our president, is he up for the task of being our commander-in-chief today? So that was one of the chief focuses for certainly for Republicans on the committee, and something that I think is a subject of great interest really for all Americans.
Is this something that you are going to try to keep in the limelight from the Republicans' perspective simply because of that? And it is quite possibly President Biden's number one weakness. Why not talk about the policies?
I think it is very important. Yep, I think it is very important. So first off, one thing that I think is important to make clear, this was not an exoneration of President Biden. This was a decision to decline prosecution. And as a former federal prosecutor, I will tell you, those are two very different things. So there was absolutely evidence that these documents were mishandled, that they should not have been in his possession, that they were shared with other parties who should never have known about the existence or the contents of those documents. So, that is one thing that's important for us to bear in mind. The second thing has to do with that mental acuity and forgetfulness, and whether or not this is an issue that we need to be very concerned about with our commander-in-chief. Anytime there's a mishandling of documents like, yes, go ahead.
No, I was just going to ask you real quick, what should Donald Trump do with the DOJ if he's reelected or elected?
Well, listen, as somebody who's was a long-term employee of the Department of Justice, I can tell you that in communities across America, they're serving a very, very important function. They're bringing important cases, keeping violent predators off the street. So, our line prosecutors across America are doing great and important work. Any president, whether it is Joe Biden or Donald Trump or anyone else, needs to make sure that politics aren't playing into charging decisions. That's the key to a criminal justice system that works, is that two people who've committed the same offense are going to be treated the same way by our justice system and charged the same way by our justice system. And that's one of the things that House Republicans on the Judiciary Committee are very concerned about, making sure we're exploring anytime we see a report like this and a charging decision like this.
All right, Congresswoman Lee, we have to leave it there. Thanks for being back with us. I'm sure we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much.
All right, still to come here from the Hill on NewsNation, a NewsNation exclusive. We take you behind the scenes of Operation Lone Star. We are live along the southern border, taking a look at how much and where razor wire is being laid down. Plus, did a star witness for the January 6th committee give false testimony under oath? Remember how this was such a big story in so many places? Cassidy Hutchinson, bombshell claim about Donald Trump. But now there's questions about the veracity. Mulvaney weighs in. He's still hanging out in the Keys. We all want to be in the Keys with Mick. Hot Mic with Mick when the Hill on NewsNation returns. All right, welcome back. So the Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito has briefly extended the temporary pause on a Texas law that allows state authorities there to arrest illegal immigrants. Elsewhere across the state, Texas is also expanding its border security initiative known as Operation Lone Star. Now, since its launch, Texas says that operation has led to over 500,000 migrant apprehensions, nearly 40,000 criminal arrests, over 35,000 felony charges, and more than 460 million lethal doses of fentanyl seized. Our Allie Bradley live in Eagle Pass, Texas, with an exclusive look now at Operation Lone Star. Allie?
Yeah, hey, Blake. So, of course, Senate Bill 4, that bill that you were talking about, was extended its stay through the Supreme Court there. So it was supposed to go into effect tomorrow. But now the state of Texas is going to have to wait until next week. But in the meantime, Governor Greg Abbott continues to double down and make it as tough as possible for migrants to enter into his state illegally. So, I mean, look at all of this material behind us. He's not slowing down, not even in the slightest. And NewsNation was the only crew there to watch as Texas military was working hand in hand with the Florida National Guard, who are deployed down here as well. So they were actually deploying these anti-climb barriers alongside these layers of concertina wire and razor wire as well to prevent these crossings. Now, this is on a private ranch. This is one of the most heavily exploited areas by the cartel and has been for years now. They push hundreds of people through this private property. They did get permission from the landowners to put up these barriers along the Rio Grande. And they're working so quickly and so efficiently. That road that you can see there, that was not even there the day before we got there. That's how quick they're making this move and really fortifying this border. Now, when we talked with Lieutenant Chris Olivares with Texas DPS, who's working on Operation Lone Star, he says they don't have any intention of slowing down anytime soon. Now, Blake, when it comes to what we have seen down here, again, that is one of the areas mostly exploited by the cartels. We're still seeing hundreds of people cross into this area. Lieutenant Olivares telling us, yeah, they're not going to be slowing down. The Supreme Court, they're facing those challenges, but that's not stopping them. They are prepared to take this as far as they need to go. Right now, it's about 11 miles outside of the park. And it's worth noting that the National Guard soldiers that are here from Florida, we know Governor DeSantis is not the only governor that is sending supplemental resources down here. We're looking at about 250 Guards members over 3 months that will be down here in groups of 50, and they'll be working in 2-week increments. They'll be doing more barriers. Obviously, you can see they're not stopping, but they're also acting as a deterrent and a force multiplier down here, Blake.
One on top of the other behind you, Allie Bradley, best in the business on the southern border. Allie, thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon. Meantime, the White House doubling down today on why President Biden, they say, will not take executive action on the border.
That Senate bill that was negotiated between Republicans and obviously Democrats in the Senate would have been the best way to go. No executive action would have that effect, the effect that this bipartisan negotiation would have had.
All right, so the president seemingly won't take action, executive action. So could that mean essentially the status quo for the next 8 months? Here's a reality check, I think. Let's show it real quick. President Biden revoked Donald Trump's immigration policies, many of them. Check. The Senate doesn't take up the House Republican bill. Check, that happened also. Trump then kills the Senate border bill. Yep, that happened too. Biden today said he won't be taking any executive actions. Check, 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 right? Reality check. But how about that question mark, Mick Mulvaney? Does that mean we are not going to get any action on the southern border until 2025?
It's a huge risk for the Biden team because if immigration remains at the top of the list of the issues most important to the voters, he'll lose the election over it. That's rare that the economy is not what drives voters, but right now it looks like it might be immigration. And that answer that Corinne just gave was not that's not a good answer. You know, why aren't you doing anything? Well, because Congress didn't do anything. That's not, people want somebody to do something. Keep in mind, polling that we've talked about in this show shows that more than half of Americans think that Joe Biden's policies will make immigration worse, not better. The number is 9% for Donald Trump. So if immigration remains a top issue, Joe Biden could lose the election over this.
That the reality check here?
No, I agree. I actually agree with Mulvaney here. The executive action approach to not take it now, I think, is a bad decision. Even though it would only be a Band-Aid, we need federal legislation. We need Congress to come together. He has to do something. And I think a lot of people are hinging on that.
Bad decision, Brad?
I think the only thing you can really change with executive action is the authority to do things and that execute. What you need are resources. You need money, and only Congress can provide those funds. We're not going to fix the situation on the border until we have the funds to more quickly process asylum requests, judges, et cetera, et cetera. That's the backlog. That's the issue.
You look at that and you see what?
He gave away the store more quickly to process, not to stop them from coming, but to put more people in the country who don't have a right to be here. Notice the Biden administration. Notice the amendment. Right, and 90% of them don't ever make that bar. But nonetheless, notice the language change. Joe Biden said he can't do that. Now he said he's not going to do that. That's different.
Okay.
Yeah, no one gives any credence to Biden floating those executive orders. If they've paid attention in the last 3 years, we all knew he was never going to do anything about it. It was merely a talking point to try to get voters to believe that he would. And now we know from his own mouth, he's definitely
By the
not
way,
gonna
from
do
that graph, too, you can see there is a clear back and forth with basically every side touching this issue. All right, still much more ahead here on the Hill, including explosive claims from Donald Trump's former aide in the Trump White House. How about that? Well, no, not a former aide, the former chief of staff, excuse me. Did Trump praise Adolf Hitler? This is a claim that is made by Mick Mulvaney's predecessor. Hot mic with Mick and what Mick thinks about that on the other side of the break. And is Washington making enough progress on UFOs? There's currently an effort to give lawmakers more power to get answers. A NewsNation exclusive. And about 15 minutes from now, what some members in Congress want next. That's when The Hill returns. All right, welcome back here to The Hill on NewsNation. Time now for Hot Mic with Mick. Remember this? The allegation at the time was stunning. Cassidy Hutchinson, a former aide to the Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, telling the January 6th committee that on January 6th, President Trump tried to take control, essentially, of the presidential limo. Watch.
Bobby responded, "Sir, we have to go back to the West Wing." The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel.
But that's now being called into question. A new report from House Republicans has revealed the transcript from an interview with Trump's former driver, saying Trump, quote, never grabbed the steering wheel. I didn't see him, lunge to try to get in the front seat at all. That driver adding, quote, it was clear to me, though, he wanted to go to the Capitol. Mick Mulvaney, Hot Mic with Mick. Hello. This story was covered nonstop in lots of places. And now it's being called into question. What should happen next as it relates to her and the testimony?
Well, they should treat it like a trial. Keep in mind, this has always been one of the difficulties with the January 6th Commission. I guess Cassidy Hutchinson worked with me. I find her very credible. But remember, what she said was that she didn't see this. She heard it from somebody else who heard it from somebody else. That's the kind of evidence that would never, ever be allowed in a court of law. But the January 6th Commission allowed it. And it sort of worked against Donald Trump, and that's probably why they allowed it. I think it's just as interesting the fact that the transcript of the driver that we're now finding out about wasn't introduced into evidence at the time. You have to wonder why that was. Look, the January 6th Commission on some very serious issues, but it was a political show trial, not a court of law.
What should happen next?
With this whole thing? I think Mick's absolutely right. I don't find this person particularly credible, though, because it is hearsay upon hearsay upon hearsay. But the press blew it up as a big deal. One of the most overused words in the Trump administration, I think, attacking us was a bombshell. Every day was a bombshell. The same thing applies to January 6th committee. But in this particular instance, you have enough people refuting this. I think it should be litigated again in the Court of Public Opinion.
This was wall-to-wall elsewhere.
Sure.
No, it absolutely was. I feel like anything that comes out and sounds like a game of telephone, when you've heard it from this person, heard it from this person, you weren't even there, that's a different story for me anyway. Right. She gave some explicit details, but none of them were details she actually saw firsthand. Right. So
let me just say, as Chief of Staff to a member of Congress that was on the January 6th Select Committee, they had an enormous task in front of them, and I think a long part of their legacy is reasserting the Article I authority to get information from the executive that normally doesn't want to hand it over. I think, secondly, they were not putting him on trial. They were presenting the evidence they found and telling a narrative. And I think, thirdly, you've got to look at this from a situation. The second part of that quote was he wanted to go to the Capitol, which tells me that, that's a pretty damning quote against Donald Trump wanting to go to the Capitol, knowing what was going on that day.
Mick, go for it.
Yeah, just for Brad, listen, I get all that. But here's the question. Why was the driver's testimony excluded? What's the justification for that? Why are we just hearing about it now?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that, but that's a good one to ask.
You do. Of course you know the answer to it. It was a political play by the Democrats.
Okay. All right, by the way,
and
Mick,
2 Republicans.
Those aren't the only claims coming out about Donald Trump. Mick's predecessor as chief of staff at the White House, John Kelly, criticizing Trump in a new book by Jim Sciutto. Kelly recounts a conversation he had with Trump in which he allegedly claims that Trump spoke favorably about Adolf Hitler, saying that he had, quote, done some good things. Mick, you saw this story and you thought what?
Yeah, this it's hard to know where to start with this one, Blake. So cut me off when I've gone too long. Number one, I now find it really interesting that a lot of people who accuse Donald Trump of not reading are now not only accusing him of reading, but reading Hitler speeches at night. This is really, really outrageous. I never saw anything close to this. I spent more time with Donald Trump than John Kelly did. John Kelly hates the president. I don't know why. He viscerally can't stand him. Why he's choosing to do this, I'm not really sure. But I never heard Donald Trump mention the word Hitler, and I certainly never saw him reading any of the other speeches. The bottom line, though, is this. We have to stop this comparison of modern political leaders to Adolf Hitler. The Democrats have done it, and now evidently independents, because John Kelly is an independent, have done it to every single Republican candidate for president since Nixon. That includes Mitt Romney. Right? Please allow that to sink in. We have to stop doing this. This is not productive. And I wish John would just, listen, I'm critical of the president. We do it on the show all the time, but you do it in a respectful manner. This is not right. John needs to shut the hell up.
We'll leave it there unless you want to keep going.
No, I think that did it. Probably enough to get me kicked off television, but yeah.
No, not at all. We wouldn't let that happen to you, Mick. All right. Want to get your thoughts on this, too. Trump's reversal on TikTok, as the former president is now against a ban of the social media app. Here in Washington, the House is set to vote on a bill, as you might know, that could force TikTok to be sold. TikTok CEO, by the way, reportedly heading to the Hill to try to convince lawmakers to vote against the bill. There's even reporting now that some lawmakers, Mick, are saying, you know what, we're not going to take a meeting with the head of TikTok. Why did Trump take this position now and seemingly change his tune here?
This one's a lot easier and a lot more fun. He hates Mark Zuckerberg. He really, really does. He hates.
Is
Facebook.
that what this is about? It's simply that, or
yeah, this is a brand battle. Okay, Facebook makes Trump look bad. He really, really can't stand Facebook. Look, Donald Trump was the guy who led the international crusade to kick Huawei out of 5G. That was the right thing to do for the right reason. Okay, getting rid of TikTok for the same reason is the right thing to do. I think Trump will end up coming back around on this. You can't be on the wrong side of China going into the election, and this is the wrong side of China.
So you think he flips back?
I absolutely do. He'll figure out a way to try and move people over to Truth Social or something like that. Yeah, he cannot be being soft on China going into this election.
Hot mic with Mick. Extra hot today, huh? By the way, don't go anywhere. There's this headline out. Check it. Aaron Rodgers and Jesse Ventura top RFK Jr.'s list for running mate. A former NFL quarterback, former professional wrestler. What's going on?
I mean, Aaron Rodgers has gone off the crazy train lately, so I don't think he's too much of a help.
I mean, he's got his politics, but I don't know if it's fair to say he's off the crazy train.
You want a candidate to bring you a new audience? I think the Aaron Rodgers and Kennedy audiences are fairly
He's
similar.
also just trying to get media attention. So I know Tyrell, who is Jesse Ventura's son. I texted him during the show.
Tell us.
You know, Jesse Ventura has been friends with RFK for years, over a decade. And nobody from RFK's camp, nor RFK himself, has actually called or reached out or offered anything or even talked to him about being VP. Oh, wow. This is literally just to get a media angle and a media hit.
You think they're just putting a story out there?
Absolutely.
Okay. Show the picture. We talked about this on the show, I don't know, it's a few weeks ago. RFK Jr. and Aaron Rodgers out for a hike. I think they were in California maybe, or somewhere, I don't know, where there's mountains in the U.S. So this is a thing between the two.
Yeah, I mean, why not Eli Manning and The Rock? Or, I mean, like, there are a lot of...
Folks want The Rock. Mick talks about The Rock all the time.
Of course. And that would obviously boost the campaign, because I don't think Jesse Ventura would do that. Whatever. He's just trying to get some headlines.
Mick, is that all this is about? Just throw this out there, as Amisha suggests, and try to get folks to talk about it? Mission accomplished? Or
sure,
something to
every
it?
politician is looking for earned media, for free coverage and so forth, and that certainly gets it. The Aaron Rodgers thing is interesting to me. Look, you got to ask, are the third parties interested in trying to win, or are they interested in trying to help somebody else win? I think that's a question that they're all struggling with right now. He puts Aaron Rodgers on the ticket. I think it might actually hurt Donald Trump a little bit. But again, I don't know if that's what Kennedy's trying to do or not.
Right. Okay. We'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Tonight, by the way, on NewsNation, part 2 of Chris Cuomo's interview with Tucker Carlson. One of their topics is about chivalry.
Biologically, you're different, but what I'm saying, I don't see it as a less than. Can women lift as much weight as men on average? Of course not.
No. I'm making the opposite
argument.
It's not less than. I like women better, and I think that my job, all of our jobs as men, is to treat women differently, and better than we treat men. That is the idea. Oh, that's chivalry. Yeah, okay, honey. Good luck in a world without it. Oh, and I'm serious.
You can watch the rest of the conversation, Cuomo and Carlson, starting at 8 o'clock Eastern, an hour and 20 minutes from now, right here, only on News Nation. But before then, and coming up here on the Hill, did you see this from a possible vice presidential candidate?
Well, hi, I'm Kristi Noem. I'm the governor of South Dakota and had the opportunity to come to Smile, Texas to fix my teeth, which has been absolutely amazing.
Say what?
Play and Alexa.
Hey everyone, Operation Lifesaver here. Today we're going to find out what delivery drivers know about railroad safety. What do you do if your vehicle gets stuck on the railroad tracks?
Get out of the car?
Correct. Do you take the pizza?
No, then I call my boss.
No. Then you call the number on the blue and white ENS sign.
And tell them I'm stuck on the Crescent ID number.
Exactly. Remember, get out, get away. Find the blue and white sign to save your life. Leave the pizza.
See tracks? Think train. For more information, go to oli.org.
Chris Domine is a husband, father, an athlete, even an Ironman. But 10 years ago, Chris's kidneys were failing.
The doctor said if you don't get a kidney transplant, you are going to die.
Chris received a second chance, made possible by an organ donor.
Your well-being changes from loss of hope to better times ahead.
What could you make possible as an organ, eye, and tissue donor? Leave behind the gift of life. Go to organdonor.gov. U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, Health Resources and Services Administration.
Are you prepared for an emergency or disaster? Because it's not a matter of if, but when. Don't find yourself saying,
when the storm rolls in, my time to find a pet-friendly evacuation center will have run out.
The scorching heat wave will leave me powerless to cool my insulin.
I'll face a hurricane without meds. Now that's a tough pill to swallow.
Let's prepare so we all have a better story to tell. Get started at ready.gov/older adults. Brought to you by FEMA and the Ad Council.
With more than 5,000 journalists working in newsrooms coast to coast, this is NewsNation, America's fastest growing cable news network. NewsNation invites you to spend Sundays on the Hill.
I am Chris Direwalt, and we are joined by a superb panel today.
The Hill Sunday with Chris Direwalt takes you inside the halls of Washington.
Here's the thing.
The Hill Sunday with Chris Direwalt, Sundays at 10 a.m. Eastern on America's fastest growing cable news network, NewsNation. You have a new home and a news network that respects all Americans. To find NewsNation, go to joinnn.com.
Every moment counts if you're at risk or living with lung cancer. And anyone with lungs can get lung cancer. It causes more cancer deaths than breast, colon, and prostate combined. And while there may be moments where you question your next step, through it all, Go-To for Lung Cancer is here for you. We are your community. For screening, treatment, and survivorship support, Go-To is your go-to. Confronting lung cancer starts here. Visit goto.org.
Smokey the Bear.
Then you know why Smokey tells you when he sees you passing through. Remember, please be careful, it's the least that you can do.
What you desire, don't play with matches, don't play with fire.
After 80 years of learning his wildfire prevention tips, Smokey Bear lives within us all. Learn more at SmokeyBear.com. And remember,
only you can prevent wildfires.
Brought to you by the USDA Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
We got out of Washington State, and I think a week after, state went on lockdown for COVID.
So then when we transitioned to Texas, it was very much so like, what are we going to do now?
Operation Homefront has allowed our family to make something of ourselves again in the world after the military.
It's completely changed the way our life is. It took us from a hopeless situation, and now we're homeowners. We have a savings account. I'm the first one to own a home out of my siblings.
Visit OperationHomefront.org to learn more.
The IRS is urging people to beware of ads that promise big money by claiming the Employee Retention Tax Credit. This is a real tax credit that helps businesses that were affected by the pandemic, but scammers are telling people they qualify when they don't. The scammer takes a fee and your personal information. If you're not eligible for the credit, getting conned by this could cost you a lot. The IRS doesn't want that to happen to you, so check the official information at irs.gov/ERC.
Fixed in Texas. It's in a nearly 5-minute video that was posted on social media. The governor talks about her experience. Here's just some of it.
And had the opportunity to come to Smile, Texas to fix my teeth, which has been absolutely amazing. I love that my bite is better, that my teeth are a better shape, that they feel better in my mouth, and that I can be confident when I smile at people.
More than 1.5 million views on X alone. What's going on here? And are you even allowed to do this as a sitting governor? Cut essentially a promo
Every state
clip?
has their own rules. So whatever the state ethics rules are would permit it. I know as a member of Congress, you're certainly not able to promote a specific business like that.
Right.
Interestingly enough, I did find out she's done videos like this for sneaker companies, for mom and pop restaurants, for gun manufacturers. I think Stetson sent her a pair of boots. She did a video for that too.
She's an
Apparently
influencer.
this is
Yeah,
her thing.
1.2 million views is
Yeah.
actually quite a lot, considering the average American has like a 10-second attention span, say that 5 times fast, for videos today. So 1.2 million views, I mean, she must have North Dakota just totally clean and fixed up to have time to do this.
Hey,
I don't
Mick,
know.
real quick, where is she in the vice presidential rankings?
She's still in my top tier, along with Elise Stefanik, Ben Carson, and Tim Scott. But I'd be curious to know what Hogan thinks about this. Hogan, does this help her with President Trump? Does it hurt her? I mean, this is a strange one to me. Again, we just talked about politicians wanting to get earned media. Is this really a good long-term plan or not? Help me understand where you think the cost might be on this one.
Well, is Mick trying to say former President Trump doesn't like a good appearance? because I think he kind of does. But nonetheless, look, I think she is in the top tier, along with several other people, like who we mentioned, Kristi Noem, Tim Scott, I think, is in there as well. So there are several up there. But, I mean, look, she's staying relevant. She's staying out there.
We're talking about
the videos she's got. We're talking about it right now.
All right, meantime, is enough being done to find the truth about unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAPs, otherwise sort of kind of what we've all called UFOs for years? Now, there is one congressman who says enough isn't being done. The Republican from Missouri, Eric Burleson, is leading a charge. He is asking for Congress to do something about it, saying, quote, "We believe that establishing a new select subcommittee would provide a significant opportunity for Congress to provide answers that are long overdue." Joining us now is the congressman from Missouri. Congressman Burleson, thanks for being with us here on the Hill. What do you want here? Is this a new committee? And how receptive is the House Speaker Mike Johnson to this?
Yeah, we've reached out to Mike Johnson. I think that this is the next step, is to send a formal letter. Look, I'm lucky to have other colleagues that are part of the UAP caucus, that we're all taking this matter very seriously. We took the whistleblower, David Grush, and his allegations very seriously. I think we took the testimony of pilots who have had these near-miss encounters and have seen these objects. We've taken their concerns very seriously, and I think that we owe it to the American people to shed light on the expenditures that are, all the money that's being used to investigate these matters. This needs to be done in a transparent way, and we're trying to do this in a very thoughtful way, which is why I think that we need the resources. We need to have a select committee so that we can have the staff in place who are dedicated to this cause.
Is the Speaker on your side?
I don't know yet. I have a feeling I'll look forward to hearing from him, but I know that we've got Chairman Comer on our side. We've got Tim Burchett and other members of the UAP caucus, and
Democrats
so hopefully
and
we'll get a response from the Speaker.
Yep.
Yes.
Here was the report, Congressman.
Representative Moskowitz.
Yep, exactly. Here was the report from the Pentagon last week, basically pushing back on David Grush's testimony and the idea that there's a secret crash retrieval program. Quote, Arrow, which is the government agency overseeing this, assesses that all of the named and described alleged hidden UAP reverse engineering programs provided by interviewees either do not exist, are misidentified authentic national security programs that are not related to extraterrestrial technology exploitation, or resolve to a de-established program. Do you trust, Congressman, the Pentagon on this when that is their finding, or do you think there is more there to look into?
I don't, because they weren't transparent to us in a SCIF setting, so they could have brought forward evidence. They could have explained what these special access programs actually do, but they are not willing to do that with Congress. So to me, it's time that they open the kimono, that they show us exactly what's happening, because they should, if they're doing something that's good for the American people, if they're being responsible with taxpayer dollars, they should have nothing to hide.
Okay. All right. We'll leave it there. And Congressman, thanks for joining us. Come back when if you get this committee formed and let us know what exactly you're tracking down. Congressman Eric Burleson from Missouri. Thank you, sir.
Anytime.
Yep. We're not done with this story. It ain't going away, no matter what the Pentagon says. I think this is just the beginning.
Yeah, I think anytime Congress is trying to reassert Article 1 authority as an Article 1 supremacist, I think it's a good thing.
Mr. Article 1.
That's right. So, more oversight in the Pentagon.
Cool. All right. Coming up here from the Hill on the other side of the break, the Big Apple goes after pizza. Yes, pizza. New York City telling pizzerias to cut down on, of all things, emissions. What do emissions have to do with pizza? Leland Vitter, host of On Balance, joins us on the other side of the break. You're watching The Hill. Stay with us.
NewsNation tonight. A one-of-a-kind conversation continues. Chris Cuomo, Tucker Carlson.
January 6th. I know people will say it was an insurrection. Why can't we know how many federal agents were in the crowd?
Tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on NewsNation.
All right, before we say goodbye, here is a story that caught our eye. New York City, known for, among many things, pizza, right? You go to the Big Apple, you need a slice. Now they are cracking down, though, on pizzerias and bakeries with wood or coal-fired ovens. It is an effort, Leland Vittert, of all things, to cut down on emissions. Leland Vittert, host of On Balance. The ruling requires operators of cook stoves that were installed prior to May 2016, to hire a professional to assess emission controls to achieve a 75% reduction.
What could possibly go wrong, right? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. I think what is interesting is how so quickly all of the problems of New York, the crime problem, migrant problem, the everybody leaving for red states problem who pays taxes, they're all solved. And now we can
go after pizza ovens. I mean, these are some of like the best restaurants in New York City, and the focus. And all of a sudden now, if you have to start hiring people to come in there and do this, every dollar that you spend on that is a dollar that's not spent to staff, profit, whatever. I mean,
in order to put onto these pizza ovens the things that catch the smoke, so you can still have the real kind of pizza and keep your recipes the same, they cost between $100,000 and $600,000, which is great, which is fine. And I shouldn't say great; it's fine for the really big pizza shops. Right. The little guys get crushed. Which is all of these situations, however well intentioned they are, that is always the least advantaged who get hurt the most by it.
What you got coming up on the show tonight?
Rand Paul is up with us talking about TikTok. And what's interesting is for a guy who's a civil libertarian, he's all about, keep the government out of my life, how he's okay with the Chinese government tracking you, looking at your photos, looking at your messages, knowing everything